what is called town planning. So for some of you who don't know what town planning is all about, if you're sitting in a house, in an office, wherever you are, there is a town planner at some point who went out to actually plan that town. It's called a township. I've got my boy Dumisani. Dumisani, how are you, sir?
We are keeping all well and good. Everybody's fine, safe, and we are still hustling. You know, we live with a hustle. And how are you doing on your side?
I'm doing strong, my guy. I'm doing strong. Let us talk about student accommodation. It's such a hot topic, student accommodation. By the way, if you are wanting to do student accommodation for the first time, I wouldn't recommend that it is an investment that you go into for the first time. I urge you to go and learn what student accommodation is all about. And we've got M5 Property Varsity. We can teach you how to do it. And then you can go to do it on your own. But I want to stress the fact that don't make it your first property investment because it comes with many problems. Some of the problems we're going to talk to it today, but Dumisani can help you. But there's the operational part of it. I always say, if you have never had 10 kids that you've looked after, don't go and do student accommodation because that's what you're doing. In student accommodation, when you, like literally, I'm going to give you guys an example. Recently, we had an intake for the 2022. We had to teach some of that kids how to operate a microwave. You might be thinking a microwave, everyone has a microwave. Not necessarily so. We had to teach some of our guys who are coming in how to operate what you have at your house, that shower thingy, the mixer. So they come through into the bath and then they shouted, there's only hot water in here. Where do I get the cold water? And someone needs to go in and teach them how to do this. Bearing in mind, we're not all coming from the same experiences. So that's why I say student accommodation, it's not for everybody. But Dumisani, you deal with student accommodation in terms of town planning. How can one actually make sure that their house that they're wanting to buy is a student accommodation, is allowed to do a student accommodation? Because I see guys, and I've fallen into the same trap before, where you just buy a property and then you go on and to start doing student accommodation. There's bylaws around it and things like that. Let's start off from there first, and then we can jump onto the crust of, you know, when you're wanting to go big, what then happens? I'm just a nobody coming in. I want to have a student accommodation. I found a house. It's about 5 kilometers, 2 kilometers away from the university. I think I can do this. Can I, technically?
Okay. Thank you, Taurai, for that. Student accommodation, it's now what we can say, it's hot cakes now, because I think after the uprising 2016, 2017 of Student Must Fall, one of the biggest issues that has been raised was the lack of enough student accommodation, a lack of enough, let's say, protected student accommodation, safe student accommodation that has facilities like your Wi-Fi, that, you know, it's not too far from the school, it's found in a safe area where students would really feel at home, and where they provide healthy meals. Then some of them would provide meals, but it's not everywhere where they would allow meals to be provided. So when you first purchase a house and you want to do student accommodation, it's always important to check the area you are in. Will it allow for the densities that one would want to accommodate? That is the first thing. If it does, then you'll have to now do a conversion of that in terms of the land use, either a secondary land use right, which is a student boarding house or student accommodation, depending on this land use scheme that you would be accommodated in your area. City of Tshwane, city of Joburg, Ekurhuleni, or somewhere in Limpopo, you know, it will depend on the scheme, how they define it. Others will normally say student hostels, you know, others will normally say just student accommodation, others will say boarding houses. So it will depend what wording they use. However, remember, a secondary land use right, it gives you limitations. And part of the limitations is it's that you have to be using majority of the property being used for residential one, okay? Because let's say it's a residential one, meaning most of it will be that you are staying there, then they can restrict you with numbers and say you can only accommodate a maximum of 8 students. That's what is happening in most areas. So they will restrict you to say maximum of 8 students. If you want to go higher than that, it's advisable then to rezone, meaning now you are increasing the densities and you're increasing the number of units. And I always say, because there's a confusion of what is a unit, maybe also to explain, a unit is anything that has a kitchen, a bathroom, and rooms. It can be 1 room, it can be 2. And when I say rooms, I mean bedrooms. It can be 1 bedroom, it can be 2 bedrooms, it can be 3 bedrooms. That
or a bachelor.
Exactly, or a bachelor, or a single room, you know, a single bedroom. That constitute a unit. So one will have to look to say, I want to accommodate 20 students, meaning for 20 students, I have to do a rezoning. And part of doing the rezoning then is to check, will it allow me to have the density of accommodating 20 students? Then one would say, okay, for me, maybe to accommodate 20 students, I would need 4 units, which each then will take about 5. That will make 20, you see. So it will mean you have a unit that has 4 or 5 bedrooms, or that can accommodate 5 students in there in terms of you creating bedrooms for them. Then you'll have 4 of those. Whether you build them detached, attached, block of flats, whatever, at the end of the day, it will be 4 units accommodating 20 students. And it's important that when you do the application, or when your town planner does the application, you specify that the facility is going to be used for student accommodation. That student accommodation has to be there, because in some instances, your NSFAS would normally say, but we need a confirmation from the municipality to say students can be accommodated. You find that you only increase the density, but you didn't specify that you would accommodate students, because students brings a different taste to the land use, you see, because the safety, the security, the controlling of noise and everything else, the municipality has to ensure that the bylaws are tied, and also it doesn't compromise the student, but it doesn't also change the character of the neighborhood, you see. So by you not mentioning student at times, you'll find that when you are going now to apply for the NSFAS funding for those students, then they say, no, we cannot approve this facility because it's not meant for students, but it's meant for rental. It doesn't specify specifically to say rental for students, for an example.
Okay, so my question here, Dumisani, is that when you are looking at rezoning, you are saying that rezone to student accommodation, but there is no rezoning that says student accommodation. So what do you mean by that?
All righty. So when one rezone, remember, I think earlier in the days when we were starting to do these recordings, that's where we spoke about a town planning scheme. So in the town planning scheme, we spoke about different zonings that one would get, and one of them is special. So special zoning, it's for all the zonings that are not defined in the scheme or are not accommodated anywhere in the scheme. So that will normally be special. And a simple example I normally give is to say, currently when you look at our townships, they've changed in as much as a Chisanyama, it's now a big thing. It's now a big business. But in the scheme, there's no way they say a Chisanyama, because remember, a Chisanyama has a different definition. It's not a bar or a liquor store or, you know, a tavern. It has a different taste. It accommodates a whole lot of things.
It's a hybrid. It's a hybrid. It's got multiple things in it.
Exactly. So you find that the scheme has not moved to accommodate it. So where do you accommodate it? You'll accommodate it in what we call a special zoning. So it will be rezoned from Res 1 to special for student accommodation. You see. So now it specifies to say for student accommodation or for Chisanyama. Then should there be a need for a definition, then the council will create a definition between the town planner who's submitting their application and themselves to say, what do we mean when we say student accommodation, so that it's not just left open and people start abusing that particular use.
Okay, so do you mean that if I've got this property here that I've got, when I go to the council, earlier on, in some of our videos, we also spoke about consent, asking for consent. And what I'm hearing today here is it's a different process. It almost sounds like you can rezone to special consent of student accommodation. And the other option is you could just ask for consent of student accommodation. So student accommodation consent only is when you are not changing the zoning, it remains residential as one, but you've got special allowance to utilize that house, and that's as far as it goes. Am I correct on that statement?
Yes, you are correct. Remember, a consent here will come now as a secondary land use. And then the issue there is that it restricts you. In the city of Joburg, it will restrict you to 8 students. So, but 100%. Your intention is not to have 8, is to have more. So if you want more, then you rezone. But if you are fine with 8 or less, then you apply for a consent use.
Okay. And now the rezoning parts that we are talking about, traditionally we have zone 1, which is what we all know, and then you go 2, 3, 4, and you have no idea here what you are going to be rezoning to, or 5, which is mobile housing. And what you're saying now, Dumisani, is with a town planner, you now need to say, hey, this is the piece of house or piece of land or piece of property that I've got. And what I now need to do is I want to rezone for student accommodation. And then the municipality will come out, and together with you as the town planner, they'll look at the property and say it can be densified to 2 floors as your maximum, or already it's been fully densified, so you can't go any further, but you can do 40 students for argument reasons. And the rezoning process is, it will follow, sorry, will follow our usual processes of rezoning. Is that correct?
Exactly. It will follow the normal processes of the rezoning. The only thing, and the advice that I must also give also, is that even though you are not even rezoning for student accommodation, for any other land use you might want to do of accommodation, do not just jump to your town plan and say, I want to do Res 3, because people normally think Res 3, you get more units, or Res 5, or all of that. So just say, what I want to do is student accommodation. Then your town planner, yes. So your town planner would advise you to say, when you're talking about student accommodation, the zoning that will have to apply for it's this. Or if you are doing rental, just say, I want to do rental for middle income, and don't go and say Res 2, Res 4, Res 5. No, because at the end of the day, what you need is the numbers. So it depends on the densities in the area. You can still get Res 4 at a low density, or get Res 2 at a high density, you see. Yeah.
I like that quite a lot, Dumisani. I think this is good knowledge for us. Especially for the people that are jumping into student accommodation. By the way, if you are in student accommodation, or you wanting to do student accommodation, I did indicate that there is a course around that you can do. That's number 1. Number 2, you don't buy student accommodation properties, let's say in November, December. You are too late for that next year. If you are wanting to buy a place for student accommodation, you buy it, the latest that you're going to buy it is June. Why do I say that? It takes you 3 months to register a property. Let's just say with all the other paperwork that needs to go through it. So that's June, July, August, right? Whenever you buy a place, you need to renovate it. You need to make it sure that it is ready for your student accommodation. So that means you need to run around, buy furniture, change plumbing, change this. It might take you about, let's say, another 2 months or so. So now we are on June, July, August, now September, October, right? Now you've got the first years that are on the premises already. When they are going home, they already want to see where they're coming back. They start scouting at that time. In your November, before the kids go back, you might as well want to market for your 2nd year, your 3rd years, and your 4th years, those that are special. Or at that particular time, you can start marketing already for December. And in December, you got a lot of parents that are coming in at these varsities for open days, for all of these things. And the parents can physically see. By the time you get to December, around about the 15th, your property should be full already, if it was a normal year, right? I mean, this year has been different because of COVID. So the investing needed to start roundabout they started now in April, yeah? So with that, if you look at that timeline, if you're planning for student accommodation in the next year, Make sure that your property, you've identified it, you put in an offer. By June latest, you already know what you're wanting to do, and you can then take that timeline and you can then implement it. If you don't do that, chances of you running into a student accommodation the following year they become slimmer and slimmer. I'm not saying that it's not possible, but it becomes slimmer because you're going to miss most of the students. And if you are now ready around about February, March, you have missed everyone, right? People like me who are well planned, December, we are full. We know already all of our houses are full. Now we're just waiting for the kids to come in and move in, right? But you do have some kids that are also, like they get into a bus and they have nowhere to stay. This has happened to Dumisani, you won't believe it. They have nowhere to stay. They're coming from Tata. They get to Cape Town with their bags and everything. They're like, do you have a place? And you say, no. And it's 5 o'clock. This is a girl child, maybe in their first year or even in their second year. And obviously, like for me as a parent, right? I mean, my kids are younger. They're not, at varsity school age group. My heart sinks at that time because I know, so where's this girl going to sleep? Even if it was a boy, same thing. But you know what I mean? You kind of like start thinking that way. I mean, we, in the last 2 years, Dumisani, we have had to make a plan for some of these kids. Like, really make a plan to like, okay, we're going to Airbnb you for a day or two so that you can get sorted. But you can't reprimand them to say, go back. Where are they going to go back? No, right? So there's the unplanning of the students. There's the unplanning for the landlords. But I think we can do better as landlords, as property investors. I think we can do better. That's my view. Any closing comments, Dumisani, on this student accommodation? I know you said it's a hot cake right now, and it's good business. I don't think so. I think everything is a hot cake. It just depends on what you're focusing on.
Yes, no, I'm saying that because we have 60% of our town planning applications in our office being for student accommodation. And in the last 2-3 years, we didn't have that, So that's why I'm saying, and everyone who phones want to buy land, they say, I want to buy land because I want to do student accommodation. Can I buy this land? Can you advise me? So on your 6 months that you were talking about, I would say they must just add another 6 months. Reason being, for town planning, at times it can take longer because there's other underlying issues that you might not know. With us as town planners, who would submit an application, but you find out your land is actually next to the main road, then the municipality come and say, want a traffic impact. The traffic impact can take 2 months to finalize, to get approval. So it's your advice, it's a good one to say within that 6 months also, start your town planning processes if there was none that was done. If you are buying a property for the first time to do the student accommodation, don't wait for the last minute because some of them will come to us and say, can you get me a pre-approval so that I can accommodate them while it is running? In town planning, they have stopped this pre-approval thing because people abuse it, you see. So municipalities no longer allow for that because we give it to Taurai. Taurai use it well. They give it to Dumisani. I abuse it. I start doing things and they can't even control me because now they've given me that pre-approval. And the issues with your pre-approvals, they don't come with all conditions. They don't check fire extinguishers are working. They don't check if there's enough escapes and all of that. Then tomorrow there's a fire in the building. The first people they will ask to say, how did town planning allow people to go and stay there while they didn't have rights? You see, so I'll say in that 6 months or even more, 8 months or so, start also with your town planning. Immediately you put in your offer, ask to start with your town planning also. Thank you.
Awesome stuff. That was Dumisani, the guy who wrote the test for town planning. And we are always here talking about anything and everything around real estate, particularly for town planning. And ladies and gentlemen, I will check you on the next video.